Hey, what's up, everybody? This is episode number 47 of the RUDIS Wrestling Podcast, brought to you by RUDIS. Matt, what's going on? We are doing part 2 of the World's Technique podcast.
Yeah, I mean, so we've got a ton of stuff to jump into. We gave an overview of the scoring breakdowns and what to look at, and what you broke down and what you looked at the World Championships, the total scores from last year. Now we're going to start dialing in and digging into the specific areas of execution. Correct?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I got a lot of good feedback. I have received a handful of emails, text messages from really cool people about the project. People are pretty psyched about it. And you know what? I think it shows a demand for this type of stuff. I think people are definitely interested in it. I think, like I said, I did it because I was curious to what the results were. I had seen a few of these previously, but it's been a while since I had seen one, and I wasn't really deeply satisfied with the ones that I had seen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for anybody that's not only an active athlete but active in coaching and training, wrestlers, I think this is going to give you an informed opinion about some of the areas that you should probably be focusing on, and give you a more tangible reason why. Because that's always the question, right? Hey, coach, why? Or why am I doing this?
I love
why
the
am I
question
doing
why.
that?
I love the
Yeah.
question why. It makes it, yeah. Hey, did you get any feedback from people about it?
I did too. They thought it was fascinating. They were like really excited about really breaking it down. They're like, well, this is really cool. I'm actually excited for the podcast coming up when you actually dig in deep and get into the weeds on all this particular stuff.
Okay. So, well, without further ado, let's go. So we know from the first episode that the most points scored were off shots, but by a long shot. It's not really close. And so when you're looking at shots, here's how I broke it down, Matt. I broke it down a bunch of different ways. So number one, we're going to talk about the setups. Number two, we're going to talk about the finishes to both the high crotch and the single leg. And then number three, I have it broken down. I guess this will be the first one by shots. So I have singles, doubles, high crotches, low singles, knee pulls, duck unders, firemen's, and ankle picks. Can you think of any other shot I missed? I can't think of any other shot I missed.
No, I'm sure there's one or two in there that, don't fit in the standard categories, but I think this gives you a pretty good cross section of the different attacks that are being utilized. And
sure,
then when we break it down further and incorporate from the setup, the shot, and the finish, it should give us a pretty good holistic understanding about the entireties of the score.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I was surprised about, because any technique project I'd ever seen before, they said singles were the number one by a long shot, like not even close. I think the one I saw was like 42% and 15%, which is I would like to run this study a few more times and see maybe I know it's 170 matches, which it's not like that's nothing. It's a significant amount of matches, but to see if the data would stay similar through different tournaments, because what we found here is that the double legs were actually slightly, not a lot, but slightly higher than the single legs, which is not what I've seen in other studies.
And it's not what you've heard. I mean, there's been projects like these, especially in folk style, looking at the NCAA championships. And, I have heard similar stats to what you said, that, the single leg is far and away the most utilized technique in the sport of wrestling. And what we're seeing here right now, although it is, when you break it down between the high crotch, the double, and the single, it's pretty equal. Not exact, but there's a high level of scoring in each one of those three areas.
So let me add this in. If you do add the low single and the knee pull, which are, in my opinion, they're technically single legs, right? If you look at broader picture,
they really are.
If you add those in a single legs are number one. But and so when we talk about finishes, we will be taught, when we talk about single leg finishes, we're also incorporating the low single and the knee pull, because technically speaking, those are, head and side shots that you're going to finish. So yeah, so I mean, if you added those things, then yes, they are they're the same thing. Or I'm sorry, single legs are number one.
But they really are, when you break it down, they're different techniques. Just
Yes.
like, I always talk about, when we're talking about high crotches and head outsides, for me, a high crotch and a head outside are two different
What do you mean a
attacks.
head outside? What are you talking about right now, Willis?
Well, what I say when I'm thinking about a head
I wish
outside,
I
I'm
could see
still,
you right now, Matt.
yeah, right. I know. When I teach a head outside single, it's a knee over toe penetration. When I teach a high crotch, it's an outside step inside knee grab.
Oh, that's
So,
just two different kinds of high crotch, brother man.
well, yeah, I mean, but
You
it
got
technically
that
is.
Pennsylvania terminology.
But yeah, I mean, I still think the technique
They're
varies.
different. You're right. They're different.
Yeah,
That's there's
the
no doubt about
finishing
that.
position, you're ended up in a high crotch and a head outside. Your finishing position is the same, but how
Yeah.
you get into the finishing position is different. Same
Well,
way with
what
the
I would say to that is,
knee pull and a low single, right?
yeah. So what I would say to what you called a head outside and a high crotch, the difference I would say there to me is just I call them both high crotches. It's just how are you going to go get the score? So
Right.
if someone's pushing into you, right? If they're pressuring you, you're not going to need to do that knee over toe penetration like you're talking about because of even the pressure. So that's where you'd hit more of an outside step. But if someone's backing or not putting pressure into you, it's going to be hard to go get them with an outside step because you can't cover nearly as much distance. Um, and
Right.
so, yeah,
Same thing when we're talking about the single legs. You're looking at forward pressure to get your head inside, as opposed
yeah,
to a low single or a knee pull. You're looking for a different type of reaction from your opponent.
yes, that's fair.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Okay, so I think I mean that first major point I wanted to make, I already made. I thought the first major point for me was that double leg scored as much as single legs. The other thing I want to say about this is that I think now just in my head, and I can't memorize 170 matches. It's impossible. I'm sorry, you can't do it. But one of the areas of emphasis this year in freestyle wrestling, well, I'm sorry, so this year meaning the year that we scored this, 2018, which is still an area of emphasis this year, is if you shoot a double leg, Matt, and you keep your hands locked, they're going to give you 4 points and him nothing, no matter what.
Right.
And so I think that provided, and so again, I wish I had past years. I wish I had more years because for me, that provides a huge impetus to shoot a double leg because you're almost not too worried about the finish because the offensive guy is getting 4 points such a high percentage of the time compared to historically, they were much more apt to give the defensive guy points in that position. And I think that could affect the data for sure.
No, for sure. I mean, I think, specifically from the double leg, when there's been a lot of clarification over the last couple of years about how you score a double and who is rewarded, who is the aggressor.
Yeah.
We've had different interpretations, as opposed to, like, if you're going to award it for the defensive man has to show that he stops the penetration and he throws his opponent to the same side of his body as opposed to
Yes.
across his body.
Correct.
And, this is where we could probably
But now,
confuse the
Matt,
audience a little bit.
but now they almost always give the offensive guy almost no matter what, Matt. I mean, to the point where I think I don't like. I like that they reward the offensive man, but I don't. I think it's almost too much scored towards the offensive guy. As opposed to if the ref really genuinely knows what's going on, they can watch the wrestling, they can see it, and they see, okay, I know who's doing these actions based on the way the bodies move, et cetera, et cetera. I think if that were the case, they would give the defensive man points more often. Now that's just not the case. And now, so then the other reason, Matt, that works into this, and now we're getting really deep into the woods. You got to be wrestling nerd to still be listening to this, is that if as a defensive man, they shoot a double leg, and if you chest wrap them, you are very, very, very unlikely to give any points. You're probably just going to turn down and give up 2 instead of 4. Right. And so what that means people aren't defending double legs nearly as hard, right? Because
I think
once they get into it. So I'm going to keep taking steps down the road. Once you get into it, that means you're going to finish it. So that means if the finish is easier than it has been in past years, because the defensive guy is trying less things because they know they're not going to get rewarded, Now you're more likely to shoot a double leg. So this is like, what do they call that? The virtuous circle, where just positive results keep compounding on top of each other due to the way the scoring thing happens.
Yep.
I mean, am I thinking too deep into that? Am I going
No,
super
I mean, I think,
psychological?
well, I think it comes, this is bred more from your style of wrestling, right? Because you're looking to defend in this position. Like, you're looking to defend the double leg, which in this position, when there's so much momentum being generated through the attack position, it's easy to give up exposure if you're the offensive man. And,
Yes.
I think the pendulum shifted from one way, 4 or 5 years ago, the defensive man was being awarded for exposing the offensive man when he wasn't doing the lion's share of the work, or he really wasn't defending. He was just using the momentum and the force of the double leg to expose them and roll them through. And
well, I don't got a problem with that as long as they're doing a proper technique and they're actually forcing the offensive guy. But where that also comes, if you go back to that psychological standpoint, Matt, where that also comes into play is, if the offensive guy, and I used to tell my guys all the time, listen, if you shoot a double leg and you're not sure what this knucklehead ref's going to do, like, you don't know who he's going to get point. You literally, especially now, we're talking about the world level, Matt, but I'm talking about like my state level or the national level. Some of these refs, you don't know what they're going to do. And so 4 points going one way versus 4 points going the other way, that's 8 points. Matt, that's 80% of a technical fall, right? That's a gigantic match winger. So if you don't know what's going to happen, that makes it really dangerous to shoot.
And this is really what's crazy. Like, they come up with clarification. A couple of years ago, I had a wrestler in the finals of the Junior World Trials, and he was a double leg guy. And this is where they at the
I like names. Sorry.
No, it was a guy from Penn State.
Okay.
And so before the match, and he was a double leg guy, and at the time they were rewarding the chest lock a lot more than the double leg.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I took the refs to the side. I was like, I just want to make sure give me your clarification on how you're going to call this double leg, because my guy's a double leg guy. The guy he's wrestling against is a chest wrap guy. We need to adjust.
That's right. A disaster.
So I was like, I want to know how we need to adjust our finishes, because we're going to get chest wrapped. We're going to initiate. We're going to shoot a double leg, but we're going to get chest wrapped. And how are you going to call this? And so they told me how they were going to call it. And then once the match went on, they reversed it and went the other way. So to your point, a lot of times it's just,
Yeah, that was back in the day. You didn't. I kind of coached my guys not to shoot double legs because you didn't know what the damn ref was going to do. And if you don't know what they're going to do, that's dangerous.
But now it's the pendulum has shifted all the way to the other guy, where when you're the defensive guy, you're better off just, hey, belly out, give up two. Yeah.
Because they're not going to give you points.
Right. And so if I'm coaching and I'm teaching guys, like, if anything, shoot more doubles, because there's going to be less defense that you have to fight through, because especially the higher levels you go, when execution areas are discussed and drilled more frequently, like, hey, shoot that double. If he's well trained, he knows he better belly out. If he doesn't belly out, that's even better for you, because you're almost guaranteed to get 4.
Yeah, no, 1,000%. So it would be really interesting to go back through previous years and see how the double leg scored as compared to last year. I would really, really, really love to see that, because I feel like the rules are swinging, and I think you and I are both in agreement that the rules are swinging in favor of the double leg. So, hopefully we'll keep running this study moving forward, so we'll get to see where it goes, and maybe, it'd be funny if we could put a whole bunch of years of graphs together, Matt, and say like percentage of shot points scored by double legs, and if it swings based on the rules. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and
so like this year, there's roughly, I think 30% of the shot points were from double legs. Maybe that goes up to 40 because people are realizing that, hey, it's a loophole. I can shoot a double leg. They can't chest wrap me. Then if they start rewarding a chest wrap, what if it goes down to 15% or something like that?
Right. And that'll be another layer to the discussion as we move down the road, actually incorporating rules clarification into the discussion and how it's affected technique.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Not to bring up, not to go totally at tangent, but in the two professional wrestling leagues that I was a part of trying to get going, um, one of the things we had a hybrid rule set, and one of the things I loved, Matt, was it was folk style takedowns. Meaning you couldn't get any exposure points till you got the takedown. And then once you got the takedown, it was freestyle on the mat. And one of the things I loved so much about that was, especially this is 5 years ago or so, right? Like I said, I mentioned this earlier. If you go chest wrap, double leg chest wrap, and the ref scores it the wrong way, that's 80% of the way to a technical fall. Now think about that in folk style, Matt. Think about if there's a 12-point swing based on one move. 80% of a tech fall. How mind-blowingly crazy is that?
When you incorporate and there's so much weight put on that stat, like you better be getting your wrestlers in there. You better, become really, really proficient in those scoring areas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's go to single leg. So how was the single leg finished? I guess this was probably my second revelation. In the previous studies I had seen, and one was freestyle and one was folk style. Obviously, this one is freestyle. I want to say it was like 90% of the points from the single legs were scored on the mat, 80 to 90%. So super, super high percentage. In this study, it's more than half, but it's not nearly that high. So we're talking roughly 60% of the points scored on the mat. About 40% scored, when they bring the single leg up and then finish. So that kind of surprised me, because I always thought the number was higher. And in my head, the explanation I gave to that data, Matt, was that it's just hard. I mean, hard to lift someone's leg up in the air. Most guys at a high level are going to sprawl, and you're going to have to learn how to finish on the mat. That was kind of where I went with it in my head.
Right. So, I think what we should do is explain to the listeners, what we've named the techniques. I don't think
Okay,
we've
sure,
gone
sure.
in specific finishes. It's just finishing techniques, whether,
Yeah. Okay,
cut
so
back.
I can explain, because these are my, obviously my terminologies. So I always say, and listen, this could be a teaching point. If anyone wants to steal this from me, you're free to steal it from me. That's what we're here for. So I always have a kid stand up, and when I say, hey, listen, if you're shooting a head inside single leg, look at the man. If he stands with his legs spread, there's the right side of his leg, there's the middle of his legs, and there's the left side of his legs. Okay. You always have three ways to finish. You can go to the right, you can go to the middle, or you can go to the left. And for me, one of the biggest things youth and high school kids make the mistake of is they have a preconceived notion about how they're going to finish the single leg. And they go in there, and if they're going to cut the corner. So for me, cutting the corner means if I shoot to the right side with my right hand, I'm running the backside, trying to put my elbow down, trying to get the leg on the shelf and finish that way. So they have a preconceived notion that they're going to just shoot to that direction, and they're going to finish that direction. And if the guy, right, gives an appropriate defense, so for each offense here, for each way to score, there is an appropriate defense. Matt, we should have like a telestrator and be like on a mat, like on Fox Sports or something right now.
We really should.
Yeah. So maybe we'll have to make advancements to our studios and have a telestrator and a mat, and so we could do this. But okay. So anyways, there's a defense to every offense. So cut the corner means I'm going to the same side. I shoot single leg to the right side. I'm running the right side. I'm putting it on the shelf. Middle obviously means I'm sitting in the middle. I'm lifting them up. Okay. Cut back means I'm going, if I shoot single to the right side, I'm pivoting, pivoting, going to the opposite side and cutting them back, dropping them on their butt and then finishing that way. High level obviously means I'm bringing the single leg up nice and high and finishing that way. So, one thing that we mentioned this on the previous thing, and I think maybe you have to run some more. Matt, I didn't see any, when you look at this data, it's not like, oh yeah, all the small guys are finishing on the mat, and the big guys are finishing high. All the big guys are finishing with cutting the corner, and the little guys are doing this. You just don't see that, and I kind of find that fascinating. And even when you go up to shots, I mean, to take it all the way back to our initial topic, there's some lines that are higher. But then you look at like high crotch. There's a really high line at 125 kilograms, but there's a really high line at 61 kilograms. You know what I'm saying? And so you just you're not seeing any trends based on weight. And to me, that's kind of fascinating. It really is.
No, for sure. And I think that's, I think we make assumptions, right? Like when you talk about heavyweights, you think that they're in a completely different category. And a lot of times when we think about lightweights wrestling, certain ways, middleweights, upper weights, and we kind of, we probably do a disservice to a lot of our younger wrestlers when we kind of pigeonhole them like you're a light guy, so you should wrestle like this.
Well, I'm still not sold, Matt. I'm still not sold on it. I'm still I feel like, and maybe I'm the dumb one here, but I feel like I thought I was going to see some differences here. Like, I think, okay, one of my preconceived notions, which this data does not show, I think it's harder for big guys to score head and side single legs. Listen, the data doesn't show it. The heavyweights are scoring a whole bunch of head and side single leg points. So maybe I'm the one that's dumb by having these preconceived notions.
No, I don't think so. Again, it's good to really know, instead of just having thoughts or ideas. Like, this is telling you, no, this is what the data shows. Like, you may argue it, you may feel strongly one way or the other, but when the numbers say certain things, they don't really lie. I mean, there's a trend, there's a tendency there. So
the numbers are telling us here that there's not really a difference by the weight class, which is semi mind blowing to me. Yeah, wow. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place. I got ADHD. I can't help it. I'm sorry. Okay,
well, that's why we have these graphs for all the viewers to look at. So when we're bouncing around and running off on tangents, they can just dive right into the graphs and the charts and say, okay, this is what the data actually breaks down. This is what the data looks like.
Exactly. So one more thing, and I think I would kind of love to run this study on a folk style thing, is that the head inside single, and when you're finishing in the middle, which means you're either going to your knees or your butt, you're lifting them up on your shoulders and finishing there. It's not nearly as good of a technique in freestyle. In freestyle, it's really hard to finish that position without exposing your back in any way, shape, or form. And that's kind of what the data shows. You don't see a lot of head and side lift the middle finishes. And so I think if you did a folk style study, I think that number right there would change a lot. But in freestyle, just not a super effective technique because it's super hard to finish without exposing your back. So I think that's a really, really important, relevant point to make.
Yeah, I mean, in any of those attacks, I mean, you can split the middle on a single, double, high crotch, wherever you can. But I think if you're talking about specifically in freestyle, if you split the middle, all of a sudden, the odds have shifted, and you've given the advantage to the defensive man.
Yes.
So you want to clear out, you want to get your head on either side of the guy's body if you're going to transition to a finish, and it raises your finishing percentages and decreases the chance of you getting exposed.
Yes. Agreed. 100%. Okay. So let's go to high crotch finishes real fast, Matt. So let me just define those. I think they're probably obvious. So, I think these are probably more, well-known. To drive across, I shoot high crotch, change off double leg. Piston is I drop and I lift the middle. Some people also call that an Iranian. And then crackdown means, I keep my head side, I drop them to their butt, and I score that way. So for me, again, I think these may be different in freestyle. So folk style. In freestyle, if you do a crackdown, obviously it's hard to finish there without getting crotch lift or chest wrapped in some way, shape, or form. And one thing, again, this may be me being guilty of a preconceived notion. High crotch to drive across double leg scored quite a bit of points. Again, the little guys, the big guys, both scored a lot of points there. There's nothing by weight, but man, I feel like nobody is going to shoot a high crotch and change off of me. I don't think it's happened to me in a very, very, very long time. I think it's easy to defend. And so I don't teach that technique a lot, but obviously it's that specific technique scored 54 points at the World Championships. It's a very effective, useful technique, and I should probably be teaching it more frequently.
No, and for me, I just think of the three major shots when we're talking about double, single, head outside. For me, teaching it, that was the one position where it's, of the three, it's easier to get your head and chest across the guy's body, get off your knee and get to your feet, get into a high level finish, which is what you want to teach all your guys to do, right? I mean, ideally, if you can get to your feet, you're scoring,
Yeah,
you're scoring.
Well, this is where conversion. This is where I have a tough time, Matt, because I said okay. So this is where, and this is good, and Matt, I need to make some more money so I can hire a staff to just do research. So I know the answers for myself, because this is another one where
The AWA analytics department. That's what you need.
Damn it, I need an AWA analytics department. Okay. I'm going to get one eventually. So what I would have said, so this is funny, you said that. So here's what I used to say. And because the last two studies that I had looked at, they had calculated points, almost everything was finished on the mat. Okay? And so when I see people, there's a lot of people who still teach exclusively finishing single legs and high crotches up on your feet. And I said, and I would always say, and maybe I'm wrong because there's a lot of driver class double legs, so maybe I'm wrong here. I would always say, well, that's all great in a fairy tale world where people, if I get up there, sure, I'd love to finish up there. But the data is showing that just doesn't happen very often. And
now,
so
what I would argue there. Yeah.
Well, but our data for this one shows that there are between single legs finished high up and high crotches finished. That's 124 points. That's a significant amount of points at the World Championships that were scored by those techniques. So what that tells me is the previous studies were either wrong or this year's an anomaly, one of the two. So that, that shows me that I should probably finish more techniques on my feet or teach my kids to finish more techniques on their feet.
Yeah, because it's showing even at the highest level, because, what I was going to say to counter your point was, at the highest level,
to be
everybody's
fair,
better. Everybody's better across the board. Like their defensive positioning is better. And maybe at the lower levels at, junior high, high school, even in college, it's a lot easier to get to your feet because the proficiency in the defensive area isn't as strong as the senior level competition. But this is showing that you can score at a very high level on your feet from these attacks, even against the best competition
Matt,
in the world.
So, okay, to be fair, Matt, I don't really know which side I'm on. Because the previous two studies showed me a significantly different answer than the study that this one's giving us. And so, you know whose side I'm on? I'm not stubborn. I hate because I can't stand when people are stubborn and they say, this is the way it is, and it has to be this way. I'm on the side of the data. If the data tells me this is the way that it actually happens, I'm going to go ahead and trust the data. And so previous data had told us one thing. This data tells us another thing, which now is leaving me stuck in the middle. Because I mean, obviously I got to trust this one because we did it. And I know these numbers to be very, very correct. But I think we got to run the study more times to make sure that this thing pans out to be the same over and over and over again.
This is going on a slightly different tangent, but kind of ties into what you're saying. I believe, one of the things that I would always teach, like, hey, we're going to finish on our feet. That's the goal. If we can, that's the goal. But I think when you fight to get in finishing position on your feet, you're reinforcing proper head, shoulder, and chest alignment, as opposed to if you're always finishing on the mat, and guys tend to take themselves out of position when they get to the mat.
Wait, why is that?
Well, guys drop their head to the mat. They let their arms get extended. They drop both knees to the mat.
But I'm going to I got to disagree with you here.
No, I'm just saying, like, that's a natural tendency. Like,
wait,
it's
why?
hard.
No, wait, time out. Hold on, we got to go back. Okay. Now, but if someone were to properly finish any of the on the mat techniques, which is cut the corner, sit the middle, or cut back, none of those include you. If you're doing it technically correct, include you dropping your head to the mat and or getting stretched out. All of them actually are the opposite. So I'm going to argue with you there because
I'm just saying I agree with you there about how you should be.
I thought we're disagreeing. Now we're agreeing.
We could I know where you should be when you're trying to finish on the mat. I know where your head position should be.
Are we agreeing or disagreeing?
I'm just saying you can teach that, but how many kids at a younger age are actually that disciplined to stay in the right finishing position? Most kids, when they get on the mat, they violate position.
But wait, so is that a discipline problem or is that a technique problem?
It's both. It's both. What I'm saying, if you start finishing on your feet, you know where your head position should be.
But you got to get up to your feet. That's hard.
It is. But if you can learn how to fight and stay disciplined in those positions, I think it's easier to stay disciplined if you actually have to get to the mat because you're fighting to get to your feet. So you're fighting to stay in a strong, sound, fundamental position. And therefore, if you get pulled to the mat,
isn't fighting just fighting, Matt?
Yeah, but a lot of guys.
Fighting is fighting, like fighting to the right. If you're fighting to the right thing, whether it's finishing by cutting the corner or finishing to bring it up to your feet, isn't it just fighting?
Well, there's difference between fighting, because that's just giving effort. What we're talking about is discipline with your finishing technique, which takes effort. But if you just say, I'm going to fight through this position, you're saying I'm going to just will and effort myself. And you can't just will or effort yourself through finishes on the mat without proper technique. Why can't you?
Well, no, but yeah, okay, you're confusing
Ben, I'm just saying, if I had a head outside on you on the mat and I just said, I'm going to fight hard against this guy, you're probably going to beat me every time, because your defensive technique is so much better than just overcoming effort.
You think so?
I do.
Really? But okay, so this is where but I need to run this damn study more, because in previous studies, it said a very, very high percentage of finish on the mat, which would then have me disagree with you, because the data would show that shots are finished on the mat, despite people saying it is harder to finish there. They're finished there. Now, this data shows that from a high crotch, you're not finishing much on the mat, which it's freestyle, so I can agree with that. On a single leg, you are fitted. There's more points from mat level finishes than high level finish, although not by that much. Like they're fairly comparable, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So I listen, I think your argument is one that many, 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 many people make. And I wish I had definite data across many different tournaments to argue with your point. Because I feel like that a lot of people want to bring it to their feet. Because yes, so if I just said, Matt, you get a single leg on your feet, or Matt, you get a single leg on the mat, which one are you going to finish more? The answer is obvious, that on your feet, you will finish a higher percentage of time if you start there. Now, the argument I would make is it's really hard to get there.
Getting there is a tough part. That's what I would
say. Getting there is a tough part. So if we're going to try to force ourselves to get to our feet when we could just finish on the mat if we finish with proper technique, that maybe we're doing ourself a disservice by trying so hard to get to our feet when it doesn't give us that much of an advantage. That's kind of the argument I would make.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the same things. We're saying the same thing. I'm just coming about it at a different way. I'm like, hey, if I'm fighting, if my first thought is finish on my feet right away, like I'm making sure, like, my position when I'm driving off my knee and exploding off my penetration knee, I'm making sure my head's up, my shoulders back. I'm thinking about all those proper alignment things. And therefore, if you get your baseline set, you go to a crackdown, you get your baseline, you try and down block, all of a sudden I'm still there, and then I can transition and adjust into my finishes on the mat. And I think I got a story for you too.
Okay. Which I think will tie in, and it'll make both of us correct, and everyone will win and will be happy. Okay, and I'm not going to pick on said wrestler. One of my wrestlers, Matt, this is now 3 years ago. So we go to UWW cadets. Okay, and he's the youngest. That's 15 through 17. He's the youngest. And so he's had a lot of success since then. But he goes out and he shoots 4 head and side shots, stays on the mat, and he gets dumped every single time, right? So it's the score's 8-0 at the break. And he comes to the corner. And I said, listen, dude. Well, I say his name. I said, dude, I don't care. You could do whatever you want. I don't care what happens in the second period. If you shoot another head and side single leg, you're running home. So what happens? He shoots a head and side single leg. He gets dumped. And I'm like, damn it. Do I got to really make him run home? I'm a man of my word. And so I'm like, oh man, I don't know what to do. So he goes off. Another parent gives him a ride home. Thank God, because I really didn't want to make him run, although I thought I might have to because I said that. So the story there, which I guess second part of the story. So the story there is the point is not to shoot and get to the leg. The point is to shoot and score. So who cares about getting to their leg? So to your point, as soon as you shoot, you have to think about getting into finishing position, which some kids just think, hey, getting into the guy's legs is a win. Okay, so anyway, I coach some other kids. I go back to where we're all staying, and I usually at the end of the day I bring the kids in for a meeting, whatever kind of talk about. So at the end of the meeting, the kid says, "Well, that kid is in the round of 12, or I can't remember, or he placed or something. And I got to his legs 5 times. And I said, do you want a cookie? And I'm pissed. I'm pissed because he said I got to his legs 5 times, but you got dumped 5 times, so I don't care. So I walk.
Yeah.
So I get pissed. So before, I don't want to say anything mean, so I walk away. So I said, "Do you want a cookie?" And I walk out of the room. Right, I walk away. And so I turn around, Matt, and the kid's following me, and I'm like, "What?" Because I'm pissed at him right now, right? But I don't want to be mean, so I left. And he goes, "Hey, man, do you really got a cookie?" I'm like, dude, go back to your room before I slap you. He said, Matt, do you really have a cookie? He said, can you believe that?
You got to love it. You got to love coaching, right?
Oh, he said, you really have a cookie? I'm like, oh my God, go away right now.
And I think, to your point, that you see that so many times, right? And when I was recruiting high school guys, to college, this is an area we would always talk about, because 90% of the time in high school, the job is just to get to the leg, right? And once you get to the leg, most of the time you're going to score if you're a really good high school wrestler.
Yes.
But then in college and above, what I would tell my guys all the time is like, that's where the fight begins. Get to the leg.
Yeah.
Is just the start, but that's where the fight begins. And then that's where it gets interesting. But in high school, most of the time you touch a leg, the guy turns down, bellies down. But as the higher levels you go, that's where the fight starts.
Yeah. Okay. Last category, and then we're going to call it a day, is our setups. And so obviously people, these graphs are going to be up so you guys can be able to look at them. Our setups. I think this is going to be easy. I think we're going to have a lot less argument than normal. We kind of argued a lot today, which whatever. It's good. I liked it. It was fun. Maybe try to reinforce my positions. Maybe honestly, I don't have something I'm stuck to. I want to get to the right answer. So for me, there's three types of setups. I didn't break them down. I think this would have been too difficult. So you have your open, which means you're not touching, or maybe like a little light hand touch, right? You have your middle.
There's space and separation. There's space and separation.
Yes.
There's no head-to-head contact here.
Yes. So you have your middle, which is like wrist, bicep, collar, like somewhere in that middle range. And then you have your control ties, which is like an underhook, a 2-on-1, over-under, overhook, those type of things. So that's kind of where. And so I would have guessed this, and this is one kind of fell right in line with my belief. Your middle tie is your most effective. Your control tie is your least effective, and your open is in the middle. Middle ties score 248 points. And so, I guess the way I say this, Matt, and I think you might agree with this, it's simple. At a high level, if someone knows you're great at an underhook or great at a 2-on-1, they can shut that down because they're smart enough to know. And this is the world championship, doing really high level wrestling. They can shut that down. If they know you're great from open, they can kind of keep a low stance and try to shut that down also. But if you're great from, one of the guys who I think is the best here is David Taylor. If you're great from that middle tie space where you're on the wrist, the biceps, and you just understand how to move someone around, boom, 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 when you're moving them, and there's just nothing you can do about it, you're going to get to your offense more often. And so I think that middle distance is like, you can have your control ties you're great from. That's great. You can have your open ties you're great from. That's great. But the one thing you have to have, and so I like being able to use those ones, the one you have to have, you got to be good in the middle. You have to be good there. You have to understand how to move someone, because at a high level, they're just not coming out of position for no reason. It's simple as that.
So that, that almost kind of bucks the trends of how youth wrestlers are started in the sport, right? Because what's the first setup or tie up you learn? A collar tie, right?
Yeah.
That's a control tie.
No, Matt. In this one, collar ties in the middle.
See, you
disagree with that?
I think a lot of the times in a collar tie, you end up going ear to ear, and you end up hugging each other like a double hug.
Yeah.
Even though I know at the higher levels, you never want to go ear to ear. You always want to be forehead to forehead. But I'm just trying to break it down on a more remedial level.
So for me, for control tie, what scored this control tie? And we will actually talk more about control ties in the next episode. Is 2-on-1s, underhooks, overhooks, over under. That's your control tie. So
Yep.
2-on-1. I'm sorry, collar tie. So anything between the wrists and the collar, so wrist, bicep, right in there, that would be in your middle tie zone.
Gotcha.
So sorry if
Yep.
if my that it's fun. It is funny because our terminologies, although we're fairly similar, our terminologies are different, and I think that obviously depends on. I grew up in the Midwest, wrestled in the Midwest my whole life. You were East Coast pretty much your whole life, so obviously there's just a few different terminologies there.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally it's the same, but yeah, wherever you go, there's going to be different things. That's why I wanted to make sure we clarified things because there are different terms. They're traded out,
Yeah, absolutely.
frequently and interchanged a little bit more. So you breaking that down and giving a level of understanding is good.
Okay. I'm satisfied. I thought that was a really fun show. I think we talked through it. The more we talk about this, Matt, the more I have a desire to do this for more tournaments to make sure that what we saw here isn't, it's one tournament, right? It is 170 matches, but it's one tournament. So it makes me want to do more. I'm thinking, Matt, I think I'm going to do this for the US Open. How do you feel about
You
that?
know what? Yeah, because what I think this will show, Ben, is the
Also,
difference between the United States and
yeah.
international technique. It'll be interesting to get a sample size of U.S. wrestlers competing against U.S. wrestlers and their rate of scoring and their areas of scoring, and then you put them in international competition and see how the breakdowns are there when they face,
Yeah.
wrestlers from throughout the world. I think this
Yeah.
discussion could mushroom into a bunch of different areas, and we could really
So
go
so
down a
now
bunch of
now
different
that we
rabbit
have
holes.
now that we have the data, obviously, I'm sorry, not the data. Now that we have the format was really tough to create. It was annoying. It was tough to create. Now that we have the format, and honestly, when we look through it, I'm pretty satisfied with the way it turned out as we talked through it. I don't think there's a huge amount of flaws in it. Um,
No, I think
I think,
I think for the most part it's dialed in. I think
yeah,
the more we dig into it, we'll probably see some discrepancies or some minor
yeah.
flaws here or there, and
Well, I
then
mean,
as we
the
move
one
forward,
that
we can.
the one I was looking at today that would be an obvious, really good addition, but it would take more time, significantly more time and effort. Is we have the setups, so the setups are just for any shot. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's not like if we did a buy shot. So for high crotches, these are the setups that work. For single legs, these are the setups that work. For double legs, these are, because obviously I think double legs, you probably see more outside level, outside tie shots. Um, I think that would be really interesting. That's something that we could maybe add, but it would take a significantly amount more time to put that all together. But that would be one really good ad. So yeah, I'm satisfied. You got anything else for the people today?
No, I think this is good. This is fun, interesting discussion. It's a little, yeah, for
Well, you
people
got.
that are
What
really into
about?
stats.
Do you have any other exciting RUDIS news for us?
Actually, no, not this week. I mean, we're just getting ready, looking
When
forward.
does the one secret project that you told me about, RB, when does that come out?
We're really diving into that now, and I think there's a
Okay.
bunch of exciting things. We just need to lock it in. I think it's significant enough where we want to do it right. We don't want to just
Okay.
throw something out there. I think there's a lot of neat things we can do with this project. So trying to
Okay.
dial in, some specific areas of execution. So
Nice.
hopefully for sure this spring it's going to be coming out, or at least the
Oh, okay.
first wave of it.
Okay. I thought it was like today or tomorrow. All right. Fair enough. That's exciting.
Oh,
All
that's
right.
another. Yeah.
Oh, did we get our wires
I
crossed
was,
there?
I was thinking about something else. The one you're talking about, yeah, it's looking like either middle of this week, beginning of next week.
Oh, okay. So it's coming out soon. All right.
Yeah.
Perfect. Sounds great. Matt, we'll talk again soon.
All right, Ben. Take care.